அருணாச்சலத்திலுரு கருணாகரப்பரம ணaruṇāra vinda padamē poruṇāḍu suṭṭṛamoḍu varuṇādi vattiyuളം aruṇāḍalatti nitamun teruṇā ளுளத்தினில் niṭkumava riruṇāca muṭṭu bhuvimēṭ கருணாருணக்கதிரி ணaruṇāļu muṭṭுcuka varuṇāla yatti.
In this video, I'm going to be talking about the meaning of the third verse of Arunachala Navamaṇimālai. As I explained in the previous two verses in this series, the 9 verses of Arunachala Navamaṇimālai were written on different occasions in different contexts, and they're also all in different poetic meters. The context in which some of the verses were composed is known. For example, the context in which Bhagavan wrote the first verse is known, but most of the verses we don't know the context in which Bhagavan wrote them, but they would all have been in some context for some reason. The structure of how the verses have been organized in Navamaṇimālai, the first 3 verses are all praises of Arunachala. The next 4 verses, verses 4, 5, 6 and 7, are all prayers. And the final 2 verses are also praise of Arunachala, but praise with an autobiographical touch. That is, Bhagavan is referring to his own experience. In this third verse, as I say, it is a praise of Arunachala, but it is also a very great assurance that Bhagavan is giving us in this verse. It's a great assurance for all devotees of Arunachala and all devotees of Bhagavan, because Bhagavan and Arunachala are one and the same. It's a longish verse, it's a viritam. Viritam means a particular meter. It's all one sentence, so it consists of several clauses. So I will explain it clause by clause, and then I'll explain how the clauses are connected together. The first clause is descriptive. The first clause is calattiluṟu karuṇā karapparama aruṇā vinda padamē. That means the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the abode of grace, who dwells in Arunachalam. That is, Arunā vinda padamē. Arunā means red, Aravinda means lotus, padamē means feet. So the feet of the red lotus feet of Paraman. Paraman means the Supreme Lord. And that's, Paraman is Arunachala. He resides, he dwells in Arunachalam or resides in Arunachalam, and he is Karunakara. Karunakara is a Sanskrit word composed of two words. Karuna means grace, and akara we can take as abode. I think the original meaning of akara was a mine in the sense of a place where you can mine and get precious stones or minerals or whatever. But by extension it means the source or the storehouse or the abundance. And it can also mean the bestower. So Arunachala is the source or the abode of grace, and he is also the abundance of grace and the bestower of grace. The Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala, though when Bhagavan says he dwells in Arunachala, he's referring to Arunachala as a place, but the Lord who dwells in Arunachala is the Lord who is called Arunachala, the Lord in the form of a hill, called Arunachala. We can also take this, as devotees of Bhagavan, we can take it as the Lord who dwells in Arunachala is Bhagavan himself. But of course, Bhagavan and Arunachala are one and the same. Arunachala is Ramana and Ramana is Arunachala. So we can take this, the Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala and who is the abode of grace as Bhagavan himself. And Bhagavan himself is Arunachala, of course. how this clause fits in with the rest of the verse, I will explain afterwards, because there then comes another clause with which this is not directly connected. It directly connects with the clause following that. What he says in the next clause is poruṇāḍu suṭṛamoḍu varuṇādi paṭṛiyuḻam maruṇāḍu aṭṛu nitamun teruṇādu ḍuḷattiṉiṉa. That literally means teruṇādu ḍuḷattiṉiṉa means in a heart that always seeks clarity. The clarity referred to is the clarity of pure awareness, the clarity of what we actually are. So within a heart that is always seeking clarity, nitamun means always. So in a heart that is always seeking clarity, terul is clarity, nādu means seeking, and ḍuḷattiṉiṇa means in the heart that is always seeking clarity. And then he says, maruṇāḍu aṭṛu. Aṭṛu means which is bereft of, or devoid of, or being devoid of. Nādal here means desiring, and marul means delusion. But ulam marul is the delusion of mind, or the mental delusion. What is that mental delusion? What is that desiring? He describes as poruṇāḍu suṭṛamoḍu varuṇādi paṭṛi. Paṭṛi means being attached to. Porul in this context means wealth, material wealth. Nādu means country or native place, the place one belongs to, the place one identifies with. Suṭṛam means relatives. Odu here means and varuṇā means caste. And adi means beginning with, or so on. So the whole clause means in a heart that it always seeks clarity, being bereft of desiring and of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, caste, and so on. As I say, the clarity Bhagavan refers to here, terul, refers to the clarity of pure awareness, and the desiring means desiring anything other than that pure awareness. So we have to be free of desire for other things, and we have to be when we're free of desire for other things, we'll also be free of the mental delusion of being attached to such things as wealth, relatives, caste, and so on. Then in the next, so that Bhagavan describes what are the qualifications we need in order to qualify for this verse. Of course, none of us are totally free of desire. None of us are totally free of attachment. But so long as we are seeking clarity above all else, these other things are desire for other things and the delusion of being attached to wealth and country and relatives, these will diminish. So none of us are perfectly qualified, but at least if we have that, if we have sincere desire to seek and achieve clarity, the clarity of pure awareness, clarity of what we actually are, that is the essential qualification. And all these other things will be that ardent love for clarity will free us of desire for other things and of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, and so on. Then in the next clause, he says, ṇaruṇāra nādi niṭkumava. That ava means those people, those devotees. Niṭkum, niṭkum means who stand, literally, but it means who are steadfast. Who are steadfast in nādi means seeking. Null literally means good, but we can take it here as sublime. We can also take it as divine. That divine grace, those who are steadfast in seeking divine grace. And this is where the connection with the first clause comes in. The implication, though they're separated, the implication is the sublime grace of the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala and who is the abode or source of grace. So those who are always seeking the grace of the red lotus feet of that Supreme Lord, who is always dwelling in Arunachala, that Lord who is manifest both as Arunachala, as the hill Arunachala, and as our beloved Sadguru Ramana. He is the Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala. So if we're always seeking his grace with a desire to achieve clarity of pure awareness, that is the description of those, those who are seeking that, and what are their qualifications, what will happen to them, he says in the final clause, well, final series of clauses. First he says, iruṇāsam uṭṭru bhuvimēļ. Bhuvimēļ means on earth. That implies in this very lifetime, iruṇāsam uṭṭru. They will achieve destruction of darkness. Darkness here means the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of self-ignorance. So irul also means, irul literally means darkness, but it's often used to refer to ignorance, because ignorance is a type of darkness. So the darkness here is the darkness of self-ignorance. We may know so much about other things, but if we don't know ourselves, all our knowledge is worthless. It's all only ignorance until we know what we ourselves actually are. So the ignorance referred to here is the ignorance, the darkness of self-ignorance, which we will achieve in this very lifetime if we are always seeking that grace. So that's one thing. Then he says, teruṇā aruṇakkadiri aruṇāļu muṭṭu. They always experiencing grace. Well, he says always experiencing grace like the rays of the rising sun. That implies that the grace is always shining brightly, dispelling darkness, like the rays of the rising sun. Just as when the sun rises, it dispels darkness. When the sun of grace rises in our heart, it will dispel the darkness of ignorance. And that grace which is always shining in our heart, like the rays of the rising sun, is that fundamental awareness I am. That is, Bhagavan is ever present in our heart as I am. And if we want our ignorance to be destroyed by the rays of that bright sun of pure awareness I am, we need to be constantly turning our attention within, to face within, and to attend to that, to attend to I am, which is the very grace of Bhagavan, ever shining in our heart. That is, I am is Bhagavan himself, and by his immense grace he is shining in our heart as I am always. And then he ends this clause by saying, this is the main clause, the main part of this series of clauses, Sukha Varuna Alayatil Riva. Varuna Alaya, Varuna means, is the god of rain. So Varuna Alaya, the Alaya means the temple or the abode of Varuna. That is the ocean. That is the place where all the rainwater comes from and to which it returns. That is the place of Varuna. That is so it is a metaphorical way of referring to the ocean. And what ocean is he talking about? Sukha Varunālayatil, the ocean of supreme happiness, of infinite happiness. Iriva, they will subside in that ocean. In other words, they will drown in that ocean. So the meaning of the whole verse, if we take it all together, connecting the different clauses in an appropriate manner, though he says in the second clause, he says in the heart, that implies by the heart or with the heart. It's an instrumental. What sort of heart do we need? What sort of mind? Ulam can mean heart, it can mean mind. So it must be a heart or a mind that is always seeking clarity and bereft of desiring anything else, or of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, and so on. So if we take just the bare meaning of the verse and taking that ḍuḻattiṉiṉa to mean with the heart rather than in the heart, that it literally means in the heart, with a heart that is always seeking clarity, being bereft of desiring and of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, caste, and so on, those who are steadfast in seeking sublime grace, the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the abode of grace, who dwells in Arunachala, will subside in the ocean of bliss, achieving destruction of ignorance on earth and always experiencing grace like the rays of the rising sun. That is the literal meaning of the verse. To bring out the implication, we can expand it slightly. With a heart that is always seeking clarity, that is the clarity of pure awareness, being bereft of desiring anything else, and bereft also of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, caste, and so on. So those mature souls who have such a heart, those who have such a heart, in other words, mature souls who are steadfast in seeking the sublime grace of the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the abode of grace, or the source or storehouse or abundance or bestower of grace, who dwells in Arunachala, will subside and drown in the ocean of bliss, achieving destruction of the darkness of self-ignorance while living on earth, and thereby always experiencing grace which shines brightly, dispelling all darkness like the rays of the rising sun. So in this verse, Bhagavan has given us a great assurance. If we are always seeking the grace of the Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala, we're always seeking the grace of Bhagavan, the grace of Arunachala. And even if that is, Bhagavan says that with a mind that is seeking clarity, as a mind that is seeking clarity and seeking grace, but he refers both to seeking clarity and to seeking grace, with a heart that's always seeking clarity, being bereft of desiring anything else. Though even if we are not completely bereft of desire for other things, even if we are not free of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, caste, and so on, if we have sincere love to experience that clarity, and if we are always seeking Bhagavan's sublime grace, he will free us of this mental delusion of desire and attachment. He doesn't say that directly here, but he emphasizes here the need to be free of desire and the need to be free of attachment. But how can we be free of desire and free of attachment? It's only by having sincere love for the clarity of pure awareness, and therefore always seeking the sublime grace of the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, who the abode of grace, who dwells in Arunachala. If we have that sincere love for the clarity of pure awareness, and if we are therefore always seeking that grace, how do we seek that grace? By turning our mind within, by following the path that Bhagavan has shown us, which is the path of self-investigation and self-surrender. How do we investigate ourselves? How do we surrender ourselves? By turning our attention within. That is what Bhagavan refers to as seeking clarity, because clarity cannot be found outside ourselves. Clarity is what is always shining in our heart, and that fundamental awareness I am. That is the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord who dwells in Arunachala. So the implication here is those who are always trying to turn their mind within, and thereby trying to free themselves of desire for other things and the delusion of being attached to other things, if we are always sincerely seeking that clarity by turning our attention within, we will subside and drown in the ocean of bliss, thereby achieving destruction of the darkness of self-ignorance, and thereby always experiencing grace, which shines brightly, dispelling all darkness like the rays of a rising sun. So this verse is a very, very great assurance. If we're always seeking the grace of Arunachala, and the most effective way to seek the grace of Arunachala, that Supreme Lord who resides in Arunachala, is to be always turning our mind within, seeking the clarity that is always shining in our heart as I am. And because that clarity that is always shining in our heart as I am, that itself is Arunachala. And that it has appeared outwardly in the form of a hill in order to turn our mind back within, to seek that clarity within us, to teach us in silence, but the clarity that we are seeking is not to be found outside, is to be found within. This is what Arunachala appeared as a hill on earth to teach us in silence, and why he assumed the human form of Bhagavan in order to teach us in words what he was teaching us, what he has always been teaching us in silence, which is to turn within and to know what we actually are. As he says in verse 44 of Arunachala Navamaṇimālai, tirumbi aham, turning within, tane dinamaha kankan, daily seeing oneself with the inner eye. The inner eye means the eye of attention, turning our attention within, terium, it will be known. So if we are seeking that clarity, we have to be constantly turning our mind within and trying to see ourselves with that inner eye, see what we actually are by turning our attention within. That is always seeking the clarity of pure awareness that is ever shining in our heart. If we do so, Bhagavan assures us in this verse that we will, in this very lifetime, we will achieve the destruction of the darkness of ignorance, and will thereby drown in the ocean of bliss, and experience eternally that grace which is always shining in our heart, dispelling all darkness, like the rays of the rising sun. So in this verse, Bhagavan has given us a very, very great assurance. So all we need to do in order to be blessed with the annihilation of ego is to be constantly seeking his grace, which we can do most effectively by trying to turn our attention within, constantly trying to turn our attention within. And when, due to the strength of our Vishaya Vasanas, our mind comes outwards, praying to him to turn our attention back within. And the next 4 verses are all prayers for that, for turning our mind within. In different ways, Bhagavan is praying. All Bhagavan's prayers are ultimately prayers for turning the mind within in order to merge back into the source from which we arose. So that is what what Bhagavan will teach us in the next verse. Next 4 verses, how we are to always seek the grace of that Supreme Lord who is the abode of grace, the source of all grace, the bestower of all grace, the abundance of all grace, who always resides in Arunachala as the Supreme Lord Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Navamaṇimālai.